Okay, we are excited to have everyone today. You should be in the webinar, Three Secrets to Leading a Remote Team. My name is Joe Martin. I am the head of marketing at Cloud App, and we had an awesome top woman in tech marketing leader who was supposed to be moderating this panel, and she wasn't able to, it was kind of a late cancel, so we'll have her in the future. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me, but hopefully, what I'm able to help this group go through with their great backgrounds in marketing and sales and growth. We'll be able to provide some insights on how we've all been able to kind of get through COVID, and also leading a remote team just in a normal setting, which we may see more of in the future as companies are developing playbooks for remote work. So I want to take care of some housekeeping first. The agenda for today is some quick intros. Then we'll go over some tips and tricks on being productive while remote and leading remote teams from these different perspectives. And then we will review the takeaways. Feel free to drop in any questions into the chat window, and then we will try and answer those at the end if we have time, and if not, we'll answer them separately. But let's go ahead and get started. I want to introduce this great panel that we have today. We'll start off with Gabe from Lucidchart. Gabe has his awesome Venezuela flag behind him. Yeah, I want to give Gabe a minute to tell what he's been doing at Lucidchart. And if you don't know Gabe, then you've been living in a little bit of a dark hole somewhere, because the entire world knows Gabe. So,
well, thanks, Joe, and Cody, and Cloud Up, and Ryan. I'm excited to be here with you guys in this live stream, whether you're watching live or on demand. So my name is Gabe Villamizar. If you don't know me, that's fine too. I'm the evangelist at Lucidchart. I've been there for almost 4 years, and I'm part of the marketing team. So I'm really excited to share some of these tips and tricks of what we've done at Lucidchart, where we're currently going through the transition of taking 600 of our team members completely remote. And it's been a challenge. It hasn't been easy, but I think we have a few good insights that could help a lot of you learn, take into action and consideration some of these things that I'm about to share. So again, really excited to be here, and I can't wait to get cranking. So I'll pass the baton to whoever's going to go next. Ryan, Cody.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Yeah, Ryan is at a great company called LeadIQ. We're really excited to have him on, leading growth, marketing, sales, and lots of other things that growth encompasses. Kind of a Swiss Army knife at LeadIQ. Ryan,
I do what I can.
Background.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Ryan O'Hara. LeadIQ is in year 5 of existence, existentially. Spiritually, we're probably in year 4. I guess I don't know if we were around before that, but my job at LeadIQ is I help figure out how to get everything to grow. On my end for this topic, I've actually had 2 remote employees for over 3 years now. And I actually started remote when I worked at LeadIQ. First couple of years, I was by myself, terribly lonely, terribly sad, so dark. But I figured out a way to get us to open an office out here in New Hampshire. And now that we're remote again, it's an easy transition for me. So I thought I had a lot of stuff I could offer to help you with figuring out how to take advantage of being remote. That's kind of my spiel.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Last, we have Cody Gilland. He is our head of sales at Cloud App, and also used to work with old Gabe at Lucidchart. So Cody, give us a little bit of background on yourself.
Yeah, so stoked to be here with these guys, and just being a part of the crew is an honor. So here at Cloud App, I run sales and customer success, and similarly to my colleagues here, we're all just trying to figure out how to grow and continue to up and to the right direction. As Joe mentioned, before I came over here to Cloud App, I was at Lucid Software, where I was the first salesperson there, like 3rd business hire, something like that. And there was only like 20 or 30 of us there when I started. And so growing and scaling from, a handful of people up to now, like Gabe said, they're over 600-700 people. So it's pretty exciting. But here at CloudApp, we did not have a remote team before. We had a few remote people, so we've been able to kind of dabble for the last few, ever since I've been here, for like the last year or so, because we do have an office in San Francisco, and then we're currently here in Utah area, and then we have a few remote folks. So, I think Joe and I have been able to kind of like ease our way into it over the last few months, and so we picked up some tips and tricks on how to kind of keep everyone on the same page. So excited to share and have a conversation around it.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody. It's okay to say we when you're talking about Lucid as well. I still say we talking about Adobe, so don't worry about
it. We miss you, Cody. It's all good. We love CloudUp too, though. It's all good.
Awesome. So I want to kind of give a little background on the first topic. It's all about being accessible. So one thing kind of I did, the first thing I did once we moved to remote mid-March was I set up some stand-up meetings throughout the week that were 5-minute meetings, like quick Zoom calls in the morning where we could kind of connect. And I wanted my team to know that I was accessible. They could get me on Slack. They could create a CloudUp video or whatever they needed to connect to me. So let's start off with Ryan. I want to ask you about what are some key tips, managing a remote team, working remote in your career, on being accessible, and how being accessible is really a key to finding success and leading a remote team.
So the thing that people don't talk about is if you're not actually able to talk with people, you're a huge blocker, especially as a manager if you're running a team that's remote. One of the things that I try to always do is I always try to make sure it's not just having Slack open, and it's not just like having text and having your phone on you and all that stuff. It's actually way more. I try to do 2-hour blocks in the morning and at the afternoon for what I call almost like office hours, where I just have a Zoom open. People can pop in and ask me questions and stuff in the morning and in the afternoon. On my team, I have, especially on my side, a lot of junior people. So they're new. They don't know how to do everything in marketing completely. One guy's a marketing ops person. I've got an SEO person. She's learning all this stuff right now. And I've got my content guy, Rishi, who has been remote with me for since he joined here. What I recommend is set up a little bit of time for them to pop in and just ask questions and stuff. Because it's not just people creating a human connection, it's also being able to like figure out things that you might be blocking on. I discover stuff all the time in the morning and at night. So I try to do it at the beginning of the day and then at the end of the day. Honestly, they don't pop in all the time. But the fact that they can makes it so like I actually had someone pop in today because we're making a product video and they need to know like what exactly is this new product that's coming out, or this new feature. And I was able to explain it in the exact perspective of what we want to do with that. So I think that's an important part, is like having it don't just do something where it's like once a day, because I might answer questions at the beginning of the day and then later on the day. What I'm also doing that's secretly sneaky is I'm actually getting rid of a ton of meetings in my life. Because if I didn't do that, they'd be scooping up and taking time in my calendar. And before you know it, you've got Zoom fatigue in hour 3. Like, I'm so sick of talking to people. I can avoid that by just having a Zoom open. They can pop in and ask a question really quick.
That's a really good idea. I think back to some remote tips of even just that connection, like you said, you kind of touched on that, but like I know people that have worked fully remote before COVID happened, and sometimes they would just dial in a colleague on Zoom and they would just be working over Zoom, and it would like create those, serendipitous conversations that you have if you're next to someone. So that's really great. Gabe, what do you think as far as being accessible, finding ways to make sure your team and even just the company and those you're reporting to know what is kind of going on with what you're working on and how you can connect that way?
Yeah, Joe. So we established, even before going remote, to have weekly one-on-ones with our direct reports. So that's already been something that was established as part of the process, and everybody's already accustomed and used to, right? When we went remote about 5 weeks ago or wherever it was, I'm not sure whose idea it was, but I thought it was great. We wanted to elevate and take that to a whole new level because we want people to feel like they still belong to an organization. They still belong to a team. I believe this whole term of like, oh, we're a family. We're not a family. We're a team. Okay, family members treat each other differently. Like my personal belief is we're a team, right? And as a team, right, how can you still feel like you belong to the organization, to the team? So we meet every single day, a daily stand-up, believe it or not, for 15 minutes, where people just share whatever they want to share about what they're working on. So for example, our marketing leadership team meets for 15 minutes every single day, different times throughout each day, in a given week. And then we say, oh, by the way, I'm working on this marketing campaign. By the way, does this webinar interfere with the email send that's going to happen next Tuesday? Or I'm working on this go-to-market strategy. I might need some video marketing or creative help. Oh, wait, I'm already using this. We can repurpose these assets. So these 15-minute daily stand-ups in the beginning, right? If you do something like this, make sure that you communicate that these are not just a check-in meeting. This is not like, tell me what you're working on meeting, because then your employees or team members might feel like you're micromanaging them. Like, what the freak, dude? When all of a sudden you want me to do a daily check-in with you? Are you kidding me? But the trick is here to communicate and say, this is not a daily check-in. This is just a daily meeting for us to just share how you feel. What's going on with your family? Are you lonely? Are you overwhelmed with your kids? How are your work projects coming along? Is there anything among us leaders or anybody in your team that you want them to be aware of? Because you can never over communicate, especially in these times, which is not just remote working. This is remote working through a freaking pandemic. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think has elevated and has become part of our process. So besides the weekly one-on-ones and daily stand-ups.
I was going to say, I just want to jump in really quick because it's a panel and that's what we're supposed to do. I agree with you. Like, I got feedback from my team when we first went remote. We tried to do the daily thing like all the time, and they totally felt like it was micromanaging. So that's why we stopped doing them.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to communicate it, right? And then maybe you can reverse it. Maybe you can still save them. Maybe you can't save them, and it is what it is. But that initial communication, right? I mean, the words that you use can be super impactful. For example, social distancing. Well, it's not really social distancing, it's physical distancing. That's really what it is. Like, how you word it really has a huge impact on how people react, feel, say, and do. So
what's the format that you guys do for your stand-ups? Like, how do you do it so like people don't feel like that? Because like the way we were doing it was like, hey, you need to do this, and this, and it just was a huge pain. Like, what should I do?
So we're currently just popping in the meeting, and then someone just starts talking like it, and then some people are just quiet, and some people are just talking more, and some people like, oh, and some people feel like, oh, by the way, I'm also working on this, and that's it. I mean, it's very open. It's kind of evolved to that as of lately. In the beginning, in the first week or so, as people were kind of just going down a list in their minds, like, oh, these are 2 or 3 projects that I'm working on. But naturally lately, it's just been like, that's kind of the flow that they followed. So I wish I had a more specific format to share with you, Ryan, or the viewers of this, but I don't. So
yeah, something that we've kind of done over here that's been pretty awesome is that there's always a high level format, and then there's what actually happens, right? And that's okay, I think, a lot of times, because different things pop up, and especially if no one's used to working remote or not being able just to like nudge your partner next to you or wheel your chair over and say, hey, what's up? It's kind of tough for people to understand how the rules of engagement there. But what we've kind of set up initially, and it depends. So maybe a daily stand-up doesn't work for your team. I mean, so I have a few teams, 8 business development team, account executive teams, and customer success teams, right? And for the business development teams, we actually have a daily stand-up for 15 minutes. And for the account executive teams, we have a stand-up every other day. So we only do 3 a week. So, and the outlines are a little different depending on what teams you're kind of catching up with. But generally, what we do is it's like 5 minutes of just kind of BS and just talking to people and being like in the same conversation. And then we try to keep it 15 to 20 minutes total. And the second kind of 5-minute bucket is we review the milestones or the goals or projects that we're working on for that week. and where we are in alignment, and everybody kind of gives an accounting of, not an accounting, but like gives an update on where they're at or what they're running into, or what resources they need that they're also running into, right? And then kind of we also have kind of a sacred 5 minutes or so, which is where anybody can pipe up and share wins or losses. We don't really call them losses, we call them learnings, right? So where they can share wins in their own, and it can be in their own like work life, their job, or even their home life. And we want to celebrate kind of all aspects of life when we're in these little stand-ups. So, someone was pretty stoked the other day. They planted a bunch of stuff in their garden, and then they spent a couple minutes telling us about it. At the end of the day, we miss out on all these conversations that we're used to having every day, and continuing to build relationships and be a team, right?
Yeah, it sounds like you're kind of like trying to facilitate that like first 15 minutes at the office, right? Like people walk into the office and you talk about a game the night before, or you talk about, a kid's birthday party that they were having the day before, or you talk about the weekend, kind of like trying to use that stand up as a way to just connect as like, hey, we're all working on the same thing here type deal.
Yeah, it's structured like unstructured time. Like you have to make sure to stay on top of the time limit, or otherwise, even myself, I'll just keep talking, right?
Totally.
But the other thing is Ryan, you brought up one thing that I thought was interesting as well, is having people feel like you're just micromanaging them. And one thing I didn't want to get into that vibe at all. And so one thing I've done is assign kind of a rolling calendar of somebody to QB that stand up, somebody different from the team. So it's not me. And I try to make it not me as much as possible. And I'll just kind of join in, but have them kind of QB the stand up, and then they have ownership and they have questions they got to kind of think about, and they can kind of guide the conversation. So, because I don't want it to be an accountability meeting. I want it to be like, hey, let's just all get together, see how we're doing, and then against whatever goals or objectives that we have.
How do they know who's the QB for that? Do you put it in the meeting invite, in the calendar invite, like the title of the meeting, or?
No, I'll just ping somebody. I'll Slack them or message them, say, hey, can you take?
Slack them in advance or like something? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah, I think this is actually, segueing pretty well into like the next topic. And here's kind of some, boilerplate insights that I pre-filled in that you guys can look at, attendees can look at after the fact. But it's kind of establishing process. So with this one, we'll start with Gabe, and let me kind of do a little bit of background. But we started with being accessible, and we did a little bit of process and kind of how those things might happen. How can what's the mental ability behind establishing a process? How does it lead to success and people feeling connected? Having a strategy. What are some of those thoughts you might have on establishing process, Gabe?
Yeah, so on establishing processes, I think you have to begin with an end in mind and set clear goals and set a clear strategy. So what is it that you're truly trying to pivot, or what is the message that you're currently trying to transform as you market? For us in marketing, and as we kind of educate our sales team to be a little bit more human and be more empathetic. So having those clear strategy and goals, and communicate those over and over and over the past 5 weeks, right? So that we can so we can humanize our business process. So we can be more sensitive to what everybody's going through, because marketing and selling through a pandemic, none of us have been through this before, but we know we can't keep doing the exact same things, saying the exact same things, pushing it as hard or pulling as hard, right? As we have been previously to this whole crisis. So setting those strategy and goals early on, as soon as we went remote, even before we went remote, it's like, hey, this is what's happening. I remember our whole company sat us together for a whole company-wide meeting, and then kind of start sharing, hey, this is what's happening. This is the strategy, and this is how we think we could do best in a downturn. This is how we think we could do, and this is how, and we want each specific team and department to create their own individual strategy, right? Keeping in mind the overall message that the leadership team just told us. So keeping those goals and strategy in mind. For example, right now, fortunately at Lucidchart, we could be used and seen. We have about 20 million users worldwide, and a lot of them are using us for remote working, thank goodness. And it's awesome. Similar shoes as you guys, CloudUp and Ryan. I'm not sure, I'm assuming you guys, your customers are also using you guys more than ever. But I know for CloudUp and Lucidchart, a lot of our customers are relying on our platforms, tools, and apps more than ever before. So with that in mind, right, how can we then pivot our messaging even more to focus more on remote? Whereas before we didn't focus as much on remote, but how can the messaging on our website, our tweets? And so having that clear strategy and goal set from the beginning, then for the past 5 weeks, we've been pushing remote pretty big, from the sales, from customer success, from marketing, from operations, anything like that. And without that direction, without that clear strategy and goals, we would have just kept on going different directions. We would have still been hustling, and that's great. But it's a good thing that was communicated in a large team setting, in a large company setting, an individual settings, and in a team setting.
Yeah, Cody, did you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, like one of the things on process that we've kind of done here at CloudUp for a while, and we're big on visual communication and collaboration, going back to, especially with Lucid as well, and communicating visually it's much more easy and simple. And so one thing that we have is, because there is a fear or concern of, well, now people are just going to throw, now that I'm creating white space in my calendar, specifically for this kind of stuff, which is definitely something I recommend you do, as Ryan outlined. I do the same thing. But that can also very quickly get filled up. A lot of days you'll have a lot of radio silence, but other days it'll get filled up really quickly. So our first line of defense of what we try to do with our own solution is to say, hey, if you have a question or you have something you need to kind of talk through or whatever, like record your screen, create a CloudUp drop, and then just share the link with me. Show me exactly what you're seeing, and then share a quick 30-second video with me so I have some context. And so we'll just Slack those to each other, and so a lot of times you can just reply back with a yes or no, or cool, great, or here's a question or two that I have, and then you have way more context when you actually jump on the phone with each other, and you can actually make those interactions and that planned white space much more effective than just getting on there, him-hawing around for 30 minutes and then, on to the next one. You can actually have a 10-minute call and wrap things up and move on. So
I got a question for you guys. I remember when all this remote stuff happened, a lot of memes are going around and be like, let's see how many of those meetings actually matter. I don't know about you guys. I actually feel like I've been in more meetings, and a lot of them could just be literally a CloudUp drop, like a quick recording of like, hey, I want to know how this coupon code works. Can you explain it? Instead of a 30-minute Zoom with like a context back and forth. I don't know if you guys feel like that, but like you can avoid a ton of meetings too by doing what you're talking about, Cody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I experienced that as well. I feel like I was working harder from freaking home than I was at the office. Not saying that I wasn't hustling hard at the office, but it's the truth. I feel like, dang, dude, I'm having a hard time separating work and personal. I have 3 kids, right? 6, 3, and 1. And I know you guys, Ryan, do you have kids? And I know Joe.
No, I don't. No.
But you have a cat, right? You have a dog. You have something, right? Okay, great.
Yeah. I'm not terribly lonely. Everything's okay.
All right, okay. I'm here. I'm just a text away, bro. No, but it was really like, challenging in the beginning. It's like, well, I feel like I'm busier. Like, why is that? You think that?
Yeah, me too.
I noticed that too. I'm like, what the freak? Like, like I got something has to change. Otherwise, I'm gonna snap. I'm gonna break down. I'm gonna burn out. Like, and I went through a little bit of that process. I'm like, I can't do this. And I communicated that to my team. I'm like, this is freaking hard. Like, we're in week 5, but it's just getting that routine and other things we can go on. But yeah, I experienced that as well.
I think it's because people prior to the pandemic, they could go and do like, I could go up to someone's desk, be like, hey, let me ask you a quick question. And then you leave. Mm-hmm. Now hey, I got to get time with this person. Are you available? No, I'm in something, or I'm doing head down stuff working on this. It's replace that with something else, whether it's, you could do it with Cloud App with a screen share, you could do it with a couple threads of something, write something up really quick, spin up a doc, maybe it's a diagram, whatever you're doing, like try and get that context down so the conversation can be really short.
Yeah, the other thing is too, is just don't be afraid to just call somebody, right? Like just hit them up on FaceTime or something like that.
I FaceTime more than ever now, dude. My screen call log is like 10 FaceTimes. I probably, some of my team members are annoyed at it, but it gets so much, it's just faster than texting and other things. You're right, Cody.
So the process stuff I was going to add to this conversation is mainly, I do one-on-ones weekly, obviously, but another thing that I've been doing that's helped a lot is I actually try to make the conversations about what are you working on today. I try to complete that sentence as what are you working on today that helps. So one of the goals Lead IQ is working on right now, I'll just be transparent. We want to break into more companies that are 200 to 1,000 employees. Like that headcount space is like what's really been working for us and doing well. So when I'm working with the marketing team and doing meetings with them, I'm asking, what are you working on today, ... that will help us get to 200 to 1,000 employees. Like I'm not just asking, what are you working on today? I'm trying to take that normal strategic thing that I might be hammering them home on in the office over and over again and asking it with questions that line up with the goal that we're trying to get as an executive team. And I think that's a really helpful way for you to have a better process to make sure that like someone might spend half the day working on one project and it might not actually serve with any of the goals that you're trying to get done. And because they're not in the room hearing everyone talk and going through those same conversations, you want to line that stuff up by asking questions and rehashing the strategy stuff over and over again.
Yeah, just going along with that as well is just keeping your team in the loop with the wins of the company, right? Like the wins and learnings of the company as well. As you pick stuff up as a leader, it's super important to regurgitate that back to your team so that because everyone feels like they're on their own island, you know, like literally, and so having them see that the work that they are doing is a very valuable piece of the puzzle, and we're like there's other people making progress, and so sharing that progress, even if it's a completely different organization within your company, sharing that progress from other folks is also very helpful for. It's just motivating in general. When I hear, oh, this team just did this, and it's like, oh, dang, like they're still crushing it, and I hadn't seen them in a month, right? And so we got to make sure I got to make sure I'm doing the same thing on my end. So keeping them in the loop is also super important to go along with exactly what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I think that these all, you know, thread really nicely together. Gabe's was really high level strategy, and also just having a good vision, right? So like people are already bought in, and it doesn't matter if it's working remote. It doesn't matter if you're out of the country or you're in your own home or in the office. Like having that foundational piece can really, you know, thrive, especially in times of crisis. And then Cody, you know, talking about having like terms of engagement almost like, hey, you know, let's have meeting not be first. Let's have that be second or third even. Let's try and like resolve something without a meeting if we can, especially, you know, Cloud App dog fooding the product, right? Like, hey, we tell people all day long to like skip the meeting, use a video. We need to make sure we're doing that as a team. And then, you know, Ryan just, again, kind of threading in with the other two, making sure that people know you're available and kind of feeding into establishing the process so that people know what to do and how to react, and making sure that, I think a big piece of what you said, Ryan, is like not getting distracted. Like, I think it is easy to get distracted. And making sure that they know, like, hey, you know, we need to make sure we are still looking at hitting our goals, and like 80% of our time is focused on those goals. So a couple of things I put down here is just weekly one-on-ones, clear strategy, scoreboards, data tracking. You know, Cody brought up sharing wins. One of my favorite channels for Cloud App is Cloud9 that we have on Slack, and it's just everyone can throw in stuff of wins that they had from any department, and you know, we get to all share in that together. So kind of jumping in with the last kind of topic that I think we can spend some good time on is holding the team accountable. So we've created a process. We've made sure people know we're accessible. What are the ways that you're holding people accountable? And we'll start with Cody on this and kind of go through best practices of holding people accountable, especially in times where you're not, you can't really walk by their desk and kind of see what they're working on. We're fully remote. So how do you kind of form ways to be accountable? And also as a part of this, like yourself, right? Like, let's not just exclude people you're managing, but how are you holding yourself accountable?
Yeah, great point. That's actually kind of what I was going to start with. Is it starts with, in my mind, it starts with me, and it starts with as a leader, and how am I keeping myself accountable to the team, and how am I keeping the team accountable for what the team has already agreed to do, right? So one of the things I try to do is, on a regular basis, which whatever that is for you, on whatever your teams are, and like I mentioned earlier, depending on the team, it's kind of depends on what the cadence should be, but having some sort of recap of these wins and learnings, right? Like, so I take notes in our stand-ups. I look at the data and our dashboards and our process tracking mechanisms, our OKRs, and from our one-on-ones on where people are saying that they are in accordance to their OKRs or KPIs, and taking notes on those, and then basically sharing back out with the whole team. Hey, here's some of the successes that we've had. Here's how we're chipping away at our goals and objectives as a team or as individual teams, and as a company. So kind of putting it out there first of, hey, here's what we're doing, and here are the results that we're generating, or here's kind of where we're in alignment with what we need to do to stay on track to obtain our goals or these milestones that we have by specific dates, right? And just by talking about them and sharing them on a regular basis, whether it's daily or at the end of every day, kind of doing a quick recap, or every couple of days or at the end of the week. First and foremost, I think that is a huge way to keep everybody literally on the same page and accountable towards what are our objectives, what are we trying to achieve, and by what specific date, and how are we doing towards those things. And then it's not like calling people out, and you're not like saying, hey, I need this number by whatever time at the end of the day. Like, it's more work for me, and it probably should be. I don't know. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong, but it's more work for me to like glean how everything is actually going, and then synthesize that success and the information that I get from across the teams and the company, and then be able to then relate that back with the team to ensure that we're all on the same page, going the same direction, growing at the same pace, right? So I believe it starts with me, first of all. And then secondly, I think, if you don't have, the data is king, right? If you don't have dashboards or some sort of chart or logging mechanism of, whether it's your projects you're working on or if it's sales or marketing, initiatives or goals, if you don't have something that you're tracking on a weekly, if not daily basis, then you're not going to know how to give constructive feedback that's actually constructive without being in the mix of things all the time, kind of maybe as you're used to operating in the office. So creating those dashboards, those logging mechanisms are super important and helpful to go off of as well.
Cool. Ryan, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, couple things that I think about. This is going to sound like not business schooly at all, but I hope people like this. Whatever department you're in on the business side, do something that involves someone else. So there has to be stuff that's done. I'll give you an example. If you work in sales and you're closing a deal, you're going to hand that deal to customer success. Your accountability to close that deal, you need to set deadlines and loop in customer success earlier on stuff so that you can be like, hey, listen, when I close this deal, this is the engagement plan we're going to need with this deal that we're closing. I need help with getting that stuff done. Now the AE is accountable because they have to have something done and closed by the time it gets to the customer success team. On the customer success side, that person's accountable because that deal is going to be closing soon and they have to be able to work and honor that. I do the same thing in marketing too. So for example, we're in the process right now of redoing our look and feel for a lot of our content. I've created accountability for every person on my marketing team so that when something's done for someone else, it has to go through the other person's filter. Example, Rishi makes content, has to write a blog post. He has to get that blog post out by Thursday because Sabrina, who's on our SEO team, has to go through and have a new piece of content that's been optimized for search by Friday. Now they have accountability for both of each other for this stuff. And the cool thing is right now with the pandemic, it sucks obviously, but they're actually going through this point where we actually crave human connection. Like we want to talk to other people and stuff. So don't go giving a project to just one person or one department. Everything that you work on, thread in a different department and you'll have more, it'll be a lot easier for accountability. My life right now is crazy. Like I'm doing a ton of work. Everything that I'm touching in marketing is impacting sales. It's impacting customer success. It's impacting support. It's impacting product. And I'm forced to have to get stuff done because if I don't have those things delivered, it's going to put in a perspective where those teams are blocked by me. Create chances for blockers. I know it sounds insane. It's not efficient. If you went to like a Bain Capital or one of those big like consulting firms, be like, no, don't do that. I'm telling you to do that. I think it's a lot better right now for being productive. It forces people to have urgency to get something done. And the nice part too is like when we're working from home, it also has a little bit more flexibility. If you have a project that you're working on that impacts someone else, maybe you're not working on it 9 to 5. Maybe you're working on it from 9 to noon. And then some parents right now, for example, are swapping back and forth on childcare and stuff. You can just go and work on that thing that evening afterward, knowing that it's going to have to get done at that point. So that's kind of my tip for getting accountability. And if someone's blocking someone over and over again, I think you can find a problem and you can kind of coach that person up and figure out like, hey, why aren't you getting your stuff done? What are you getting stuck on? And you can help them up and coach them.
It's funny you brought up kind of the work patterns being changed. Like we did a study of like usage of Cloud App over the last month, and there's been like a nearly 2.5x increase in usage during like morning commute time, what that used to be, and then also late at night, like after hours. So there's this weird like lots of breaks in between. Like I'm helping with homeschooling in the morning, and then I'm like helping with the kids' lunch, and then my wife and I are swapping, and so it's interesting to that those blockers, which you're right, it's like opposite of what you'd learn in business school, it almost creates like a thread of accountability. Like you start with that work back schedule, and then Jim on your team knows that Susan needs his work before she can get started. And so you have like this master plan of people kind of having to rely on people. It's almost like having a gym partner. Like if you have someone that is going to be at the gym at 6 a.m. and when your alarm goes off at 5:45 and you've like maybe have second thoughts of turning it off because that they're going to be there. And if you're not there, then you might feel bad about it. So
all right, Joe, for you too, like you guys put on this webinar, you've created an external deadline for all the attendees that are here. Like where you have to get promotional content up, you have to get a landing page up, you have to do social posts, you have to get everything set up, you got to get the panelists prepared, we got to do a planning call. All those things come together because you have external factors in. It's actually one of the best ways to get stuff done.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then, Cody, holding yourself accountable. I think that's like mastering the plan of having that schedule that people can work from is really a motivator to me as well, as I'm sure it is for you. Gabe, what do you want to say? What do you have to jump in on?
Yeah, so at Lucitor, we're pretty big into OKRs, so objective and key results. So we set those on a quarterly basis. And our marketing operations, Michelle, does an amazing job at keeping everybody on the same page. One second, I got some apple peel in my throat. Freaking
Classic Gabe.
You can edit this, I'm not sure. But what's cool about these OKRs is that they're set on a department level and on a team level. So our marketing team right? There's about 40 or 50 of us in the whole marketing team, including self-serve or freemium and enterprise marketing combined, which is pretty big. So we keep our mission and vision in mind, which is, okay, Lucidchart's a visual workspace that combines diagramming, data visualization, and collaboration to do two things. Number one, accelerate understanding, and number two, drive innovation. With those two things in mind, then we craft our OKRs, okay, as a team. And then based on those objectives and key results, then individual teams then we hope and we make sure and ensure that their individual team OKRs align to the greater OKR of the department and of the company. Again, with the whole goal of accelerating understanding of our customers and making sure our customers are driving innovation through what I just said, diagramming, data visualization, and collaboration. So that's one way of how we've kept, from day one. I've been here almost 4 years, and I remember I never heard of previous leader coming to Lucidchart about OKRs, and it's an awesome way of keeping everybody accountable and giving someone that North Star to like, okay, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? And there's a document that you can check to see the progress of these objectives and how each key result is adding to that objective.
Yeah, just one other thought on like a more qualitative piece that kind of goes along both veins here with Ryan and Gabe is I've found a lot of success in encouraging the team to communicate and collaborate with each other, outside of like a team setting or outside of myself or whatever. And so that kind of goes back to knowing the data and knowing the numbers and knowing exactly what people are doing, where they're finding successes and where they're struggling, because then it's very easy for you to say, hey, you did a great job at this or whatever this week. And, I've been getting a few questions or there's some others that are struggling with the same thing. Would you mind reaching out to them and then just kind of talking through, how their week's gone and seeing if you could lend a hand on either helping them, with their project or some stumbling block that they're running up against, or that you seem to not had an issue with, or you've gotten around somehow or solved, or just be a sounding board for them and share some of your own best practices. And so in doing that, first of all, it takes me out of the equation, and I'm just kind of saying, just kind of making up pairs and pairing people up to have these little conversations. But where the real success comes from is they're keeping each other accountable and helping each other, solve problems, especially, with remote work stuff. It creates unique problems that people have not had the experience before, or just don't know how to communicate and collaborate effectively as they would if they were in the office. Even if nothing changes and they're still communicating in Slack or something, you're still in the office and it's just different, right? So just kind of helping guide people towards other folks to kind of yin yang everybody basically, and that's worked pretty well.
As a kind of as we're wrapping up, I want to go into a little deeper on this topic on one's kind of sub point of it. We talked about goals, kind of accountability partners, and scoreboards or dashboards. I'd love to kind of go through each of you guys on the panel and kind of hear how are you kind of setting up a scoreboard or a dashboard? How are people able to see that? And kind of just go through the kind of that strategy. Let's start with Gabe, since he went last on this question, and then we'll go to Ryan and then Cody.
Yes. So two things come to mind. Number one, going back to the marketing OKRs that we've set, there's a dashboard and there's, in combined that pulls from a Google sheet essentially that has all the data there of the progress on the objective against the quarter. And it's literally color coded with conditional formatting of like, it's a green, yellow, red, and who's accountable, who's the owner. So that's very visible. And that's very, that visual identity, right, that helps anybody see the progress of, okay, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to have to trade off and kind of slow down on this. Or if you want me to do this other thing, then I'm going to have to kind of, this OKR won't get, met. So on a marketing level, that's something, and in there, again, depending on the marketing OKR, how many MQLs you want to generate, website traffic, SEO, conversions, CPC or cost per acquisition, a bunch of other metrics that we measure on a quarterly basis. That's somewhat of our marketing dashboards. I also have access to our executive company dashboards. I'm not sure if everybody in the company at Lucidchart does, but of our and that's one of the things love about Lucidchart, how transparent we are with our numbers. So these are literally like 20 or 30 metrics of how the business performance is doing that's accessed through Tableau. And then I literally have a bookmark link there, and then I can just click on it and it opens all these charts and all these visuals that shows me the performance and forecast for the month and the quarter and even the year. I can filter of how we're doing in terms of registrations compared to last month, in terms of signups, in terms of how many freemiums, how many people churn, how many people we were upsell or cross-selling. And a lot of the stuff can obviously sound familiar to Cody, but it's things that have really helped me understand, okay, how's the health of our business doing? Are we really doing okay? Are we not? From both marketing point of view and an executive point of view, that's very neat how transparent Lucidchart is. So
awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Ryan, what are kind of your thoughts on things you like out of a scoreboard and also kind of stuff you're doing at Lead IQ?
Yeah, so one of the things that we kind of have as a principle for marketing is our team, we did a marketing kickoff meeting like the first couple weeks of January. We did a meeting and kind of figured out what do we want marketing to look like this year. And some of it was strategy. Some of it was, we did OKRs too, by the way, very helpful. But one of the things that we tried to do is we tried to say, what are some values that we stand for? What are the hills that we want to die on? And one of the hills that we wanted to die on was trying to do stuff that marketing teams, we want other marketing teams to be jealous of the marketing we do. It sounds really arrogant. I know you're probably like, oh, I hate you guys, you suck, get a haircut. But we're always trying and find cool things that we can do to always up that. The problem is you need data to back up that the things you're trying to do are working. What we've been able to do is we kind of have a couple different setups. On the marketing side, every week we actually do a screen share and literally dump in and look at metrics on stuff like, hey, you wrote this blog post, this is how many things, how many visitors this brought in, this is how many demos were booked from this. On the other side, we'll go look at metrics. We actually have an intern that will go put together this report. It's his job all semester. He's just going through and collecting, I put this video on LinkedIn, how many hits did it get? What were the engagements? What were the titles from those engagements? What were the company sizes from it? We have all this data being aggregated in one spot to see if it fits those OKRs that we said earlier. And what's really interesting for us is we're doing that on a weekly basis where we do a meeting and look at the numbers. But the other thing that we also do is we report it to the other departments as well. So we'll go put that stuff in a Slack channel. We have a wins channel, like you guys talked about Cloud9. We'll actually put some of these things on. So I'll give you an example. Last week I did a webinar on Thursday, and I was really excited about it. We had the most we've ever had for a webinar for people that either signed up, watched it live, or watched the recording. And those three numbers were numbers that we were tracking. We want to beat that number now next week when we do our webinar. And it's kind of nice for setting goals having this because we're looking and measuring all this stuff. I highly recommend you increase the frequency of how often you look at the numbers. Instead of doing a huge, massive project of where are our leads coming from and stuff, we do little sprints of this big thing we focused on this week to help us get to this goal. Let's see how we did on that end. And then let's try and see if we can go up and up every week.
Awesome. Love it. Thanks, Ryan. Cody, what about you?
Yeah, I just kind of echo what everybody else said. I did see as well, there was a chat that came through, a question there, so maybe we can just hit that one real quick. So it says, when we go back to the office, what best practices are carried over for the better?
Sure.
I think one of them is a better process for having meetings, as we kind of talked about before. I think this kind of helps us refine when do we actually need a meeting, and when can we just be more clear and concise in some sort of interaction and also expectation of steps to get there. Because I mean, I was just the same way. The first 2 weeks, especially, just completely slammed with meetings, and it was like I never even got out of my dang chair to, like, you know, even go get a drink of water, because it was like the second that one meeting ended, I was clicking right into another one and starting another one, just back to back all day long. And so although everything was important and relevant, like, that's one thing that we've definitely super relied on, and have honestly, like, employed a lot more fervently over the last couple of weeks, is even just, you know, initially, like I said, internally, we use Cloud App and we create a video drop, and we kind of go over the issue and try to spend less than 60 seconds talking about it. And then the nice thing about Cloud is you have 2x speed, so I can watch it twice as fast and move on to the next one. And but I'm just able to crush through tasks and questions and issues and point people in the right direction so much more effectively that way, rather than getting on and even having myself get in my own way of my own calendar of, you know, getting on there. Every call is going to be 30 minutes, whether you like it or not. It's just kind of like what happens when you set up a meeting. And so you get on there, you BS about what's going on and how it's going, which is great. You need to have some planned time for that anyway. It's just not every single time you set up a meeting. And then you actually talk about the meat of the meeting for what's going on. And then you usually kind of end up strategizing and talking about other things that are kind of interwoven and connected to that topic and issue. So for me, it's helped us get a lot more, not rigid, but like a lot more process oriented around when a meeting is necessary and how those should go, and prep data and information and commentary that goes into a meeting beforehand, so that we can walk into that meeting and just like kick the doors in. Everybody knows what we're going to talk about, and everyone's on the same page, and we can just align our pieces together, and we can go from having 30-minute meetings to then 15-minute, you know, syncs on the topic to make sure that we all move forward from there. So that's one thing that's been pretty helpful for us that I think is definitely going to carry over once we all get back in the office again.
That's great.
Good point, man. Gonna have to get to a looser chart. Thanks for sharing, Cody.
Yeah, right.
Guys, we're up against it. That was a really good question. Is there any, you know what, let's actually just kind of do some, we'll call it closing arguments, but just parting words from you guys. It's, you know, it's definitely not a normal time, but any parting thoughts on leadership in kind of remote times?
Who's going first?
Let's start with you, Ryan. Yeah.
Okay. My biggest thing is this. It sounds bad, but we need to attack the situation. So don't just go and say, oh, we're working from home and stuff. There's some advantages to working from home. If you're prospecting, there's cool stuff around your house you could do in prospecting that you wouldn't normally be able to do in the office. I've got a dog here. I could literally grab a video and send a caught up video to someone, or with like me talking to the prospect. If I'm in customer support, I could make a better connection with someone by talking about my home life. We need to start using our own vulnerabilities and feelings that we have and use those things to relate to the customers that we're working with and facing with. And if you can do those things, you're going to be in a much better spot. It works with coworkers, but it also works for business. This is a chance now. We are not getting full of distractions with people in the office. This is a chance to get head down and say, how do I Walt Disney this stuff? And I'll use Disney as an example, because when you look at the entertainment industry, Walt Disney completely changed the entertainment industry. How do I Henry Ford what's going on here? How do I lead instead of just doing stuff that's what everyone else is doing? I'm literally looking, 3 weeks, or I'd say we're probably now in we're probably in week 5 or 6 here at Lead IQ for us in New Hampshire, at least. I look at the situation and say, man, you know what I did? I was thinking, how do I nuke webinars? How do I make a new format for that? And we've been trying to rework that whole angle. This is the time to kind of do a tune-up on the things that you don't like, because you don't have the chaos and the other stuff going on. And you have plenty of time to think. You don't have noise around the office. Attack the situation. Use it to get better, so that when we come back to what might be closer to normal of how it was before, you're going to be in a better situation, and business will be better because of it.
I love that, dude. when you said Henry Ford, this quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt came to mind. That says, "A smooth sea never made a skilled sailor." You know, we gotta. And Cody knows how much I love quotes. You know what I'm saying? So we got to get outside of comfort zone. This sucks. Okay, big time. And we're seeing both sides of the spectrum. People are lonely as freak. Okay, by themselves in their house because they couldn't travel back home, or they're overwhelmed with tons of kids and they can't even go to the bathroom without people bothering them. You know what I'm saying? So none of us has gone through this, but it's during turbulent times, it's during the storm of and the sea is when we can really come out triumphant or just sink, right? So I hope all of us choose to swim and really come out stronger than ever. And I think all of us, have the ability, whether you're listening again live or on demand, to win. It's just a matter of mindset, execution, and having the vision. So that's my kids in the background arguing about Legos.
It's just real life,
I'm gonna
man.
mute myself, but those are my parting words. So
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Cody?
Yeah, I think just kind of two things really. One is to especially in the transition to going over, is just to be a little patient. You know, for our team, it really took 2 to 3 weeks to actually start being okay with everything that was going on, and a lot of things you're still kind of struggling with, just in communication gaps, being remote. But so just be a little bit patient with the team and the process and the company. And the second thing is when it comes to like leadership around controlling the chaos that is created. I have kids too, and so there's just a lot of other factors at play here. But even for everybody else, it's just ensuring that everybody feels like that they're on the same page and that they know what's going on with the company, and they don't feel like they're unemployed looking for a job all day long. They feel like what they're doing at every minute of every day matters, and there's a point to keeping their own white space in their calendar filled up, and that there is a point to every 15, 20, 30-minute block of their day, right? And it's also important to ensure that we're still, even though they're at home and working, to ensure that we're still encouraging work-life balance, because it's even more difficult when you're working and living in the exact same square footage. So just encourage people, rather than to take work for an hour, take a break for 2 hours, work for 2 hours, take a break for an hour, and do that all day long. Encourage them to continue with their same schedule that they had before, when they're going into the office and they crush it and they go home and they stop. I would also say to encourage that type of mentality as well, because otherwise, if everyone's just working all day long, all through the night, every single day, all through the weekends, just because they can and they're in their office now all the time, that feeling never leaves. And we want to avoid kind of burnout with that kind of stuff. So just encourage to keep up the same process and structure and their own calendar and time on it they had to. And I think that makes for a healthy team and for a healthy mentality with everything going on.
Awesome. Cody, Ryan, Gabe, thank you for your hour today. Great to see all of you and appreciate the insights. And we'll support each other through all of this, and hopefully, we come out stronger, like Gabe said.
Yeah, we're all on LinkedIn, so connect with us on LinkedIn. So
definitely. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right, see you.
See you guys. Thank you very much.